Hello, my name is Sarah Parkinson, and I'm going to talk to you about my project that I did on the effects of a token system on work behavior in a sheltered workshop. So I chose to base my study on examining the effects of token systems on clients' work behavior in a workshop setting. So I used a multiple baseline design across 3 subjects, and they were all adult clients who were diagnosed with mild mental retardation, and we observed them for 6 weeks. So before I get into the study itself, I thought it was important to address the debate surrounding sheltered workshops. The question could be raised, why would we be doing new research on something that's supposed to be getting phased out in the near future? So there is a movement away from sheltered workshops, lots of criticism about it segregates people with disabilities from the general community. It might be creating barriers to employment opportunities. And there's also been the Illinois Employment First Act, which went into effect in 2013, that basically says individuals with disabilities should be considered for competitive employment first before anything else. But still, there are others that support sheltered workshops. A lot of times it's families that are fighting against the movement, that they believe the workshops are teaching their loved ones valuable skills and kind of being a preparation or a stepping stone towards competitive employment. And then behaviorists, they're also out there that suggest modifications to improve workshops rather than completely discarding them. So basically, as long as workshops still exist, the problems that the clients exhibit and encounter within them will still be socially relevant, and therefore they'll still warrant for future research. There have been several methods used in the past in different studies to increase production rates or work behavior in clients. Some of those included praise and encouragement, goal setting and feedback, self-monitoring, intermingling high and low producers, and group counseling and immediate monetary rewards. The method that I'm using in my study is a token system. So that's a system of contingency management based on the systematic reinforcement of target behavior. The reinforcers are symbols or tokens that can be exchanged for other reinforcers. So in this case, I'm using stickers as the token, and then the clients will be able to exchange those stickers later for backup reinforcers. Here I have a couple studies that support the token system and its effectiveness. The first study, they used the token economy to decrease problem behaviors, and it was the most effective compared to other methods that they included as well. And then in the second study, they used the token system on productivity of adults with disabilities in the sheltered workshop setting. So similar to what I'm doing, but they used a withdrawal design. Still, they found the token system to be effective. So for my project, we're doing a study using a multiple baseline design to investigate the effects of a reward system on duration of client work behavior in a workshop setting. And then the results and strategies are intended to provide guidance for future implementation and evaluation of similar systems. So this study involves 3 subjects, 3 adults who attend a sheltered workshop in Chicago. They're all diagnosed with mild mental retardation, and they've all been found to have difficulty focusing on any type of work for more than a few minutes. So first we have Kevin. He's a male, 35 years old. Besides mild mental retardation, he's also diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, depressive disorder, and Fragile X syndrome. And we've got his medications listed below as well. Next is Jake. He's a 26-year-old male, and his other diagnoses are ADHD and bipolar disorder. And our third participant is Violet, who's a 57-year-old female who's also diagnosed with depressive disorder. So, as we said, this takes place in a sheltered workshop in Chicago. It's a big warehouse divided into 8 areas, and each area has one job coach and 20 to 25 clients. The clients sit at long tables, and the job coach has a desk with a computer. There's usually a pallet of piecework in the corner of the area, and all 3 of our participants work in Area 5, so that'll make it easy for the observers to switch gears. For our materials, as I said, we'll have a variety of small stickers that we use as tokens. Um, Also, they'll have 3 charts, and one will be taped to each of the clients' workspaces, and that'll be for keeping track of the stickers that they earn. There'll also be 2 stopwatches for each of the observers and recording sheets for the observers to record their data. So here we have the variables. Our dependent variable was duration of client's work behavior. So the work behavior was defined as any behavior that contributes to the completion of the piecework assigned to that client. So that can also include gathering materials and setting up their workspace, or asking the job coach for more work if they finished what's in front of them. And our independent variable was the token system intervention. The clients received a sticker and praise for every 5 minutes that they exhibited work behavior, and then 5 stickers would earn the client the chance to do an activity of their choice that afternoon for 30 minutes. And that could include playing on an iPad or the computer, listening to music, having one-on-one time with a friend or an available staff, anything that they chose that was appropriate we could work with. So to measure the duration of the behaviors, we had staff members conducting direct observations. So the observation sessions were 1 hour per client every morning that they were there, which was Monday through Friday. It went on for 6 weeks, and the observers used stopwatches to measure the time in minutes, and then they would record their data on their observation sheets. And then 2 days a week, we had an independent secondary observer present. So that allowed us to calculate inter-observer agreement for 40% of our observations. And we used total duration agreement for that, which was dividing the shorter duration by the longer duration and multiplying by 100. So for each of our clients, for Kevin, the IOA was 97%, Jake was 91%, and Violet was 95%. So we did pretty well there. Our design was the multiple baseline design across subjects. As we said, we had 3 clients selected based on their difficulty performing work behavior for more than a few minutes within a given hour. So this involved direct observations without the independent variable to establish baseline levels. And then we introduced the independent variable once the baseline levels became stable. So first was Kevin, and then later we introduced the treatment to Jake and then Violet. So to ensure validity, the independent variable is introduced only when the responding levels are stable. And also we provide thorough training for both the observers and the job coach. And that was to ensure that everyone was on the same page and we were being consistent with how to use the stopwatches, how we're recording data, how we actually define the target behavior, and then the actual implementation of the reward system. So the direct observations were 1 hour each. Kevin was from 9 to 10, Jake was observed from 10 to 11, and Violet from 11 to 12. And again, the observers were measuring and recording the duration of work behavior in minutes. During the baseline phase, clients were observed in their natural environment, which was Area 5. No new variables were introduced, And the clients were observed at baseline until responding levels achieved a steady state. So for Kevin, it only took 5 days, and then Jake was at baseline for 10 days and Violet for 15. So before implementing the reward system, we made sure that the clients understood exactly how it was going to work and what the target behavior was. Then we introduced the independent variable one at a time to each client. As we did that, we taped a chart near the client's workspace so they could use that to collect their stickers. And then the observer would communicate with the job coach throughout that hour and report when the client reached 5 minutes of work behavior so that the job coach could then go give the client verbal praise and a sticker. And like we said before, once the client earned 5 stickers, they would get the chance to do a preferred activity for 30 minutes that afternoon. So there are a few different things that we can talk about regarding social validation. First of all, the study was created based on concerns expressed by the interdisciplinary teams of our clients, basically saying that they're concerned that the clients are not producing as much as they could be and therefore not making as much money as they could be making, and overall just lacking focus in general. So we also held meetings during the development of the program and invited anybody that was significant to the client's life, including the client, and they were able to give input. And also we used a multiple baseline design rather than the withdrawal design, and that was because clients and families wanted to make sure that the client had every opportunity to produce and earn as much as possible, so they didn't want to risk taking away any supports that might be helping them produce more. And then finally, at the end of the study, we distributed a social validity questionnaire and we'll discuss those results in a little bit. Here we have Kevin's results. As you can see, in the baseline phase, his mean duration was 6.6 minutes, and it was 15.7 minutes during the treatment phase, so it did go up. The level at baseline was low and pretty stable, and a little bit more variable during the treatment phase because it went from the low level to such a high level. And we can see there was no trend during baseline, while in the treatment phase, the trend was on a pretty steady upward increase. And he had no latency to behavior change. You can see that his behavior begins to change as soon as the treatment phase begins. Jake's results show us that during baseline, his mean duration was 7 minutes, and it went up to 19.4 minutes in the treatment phase. His level during baseline was low. It started out pretty variable, and then it stabilized before starting into the treatment phase. And at that point, the level went from being very low to very high. The trend during baseline was 0, and then we can see that there's a gradual increase at a fairly stable rate in the trend during treatment phase. Also, again, there was no latency to behavior change for Jake. And finally, we have Violet's results. Her mean duration started out at 4.5 minutes during baseline, and it went up to 9.2 minutes. Her levels was low and variable in the beginning of baseline, and then it stabilized before we introduced treatment. The level during the treatment phase was slightly variable and went from lower to higher levels as well. The trend during baseline was 0, and you can see that it gradually increases during the treatment phase. And you can see a little bit of latency to behavior change if you look at the phase change line. The behavior seems to stay stable with the baseline levels until a few sessions later, and then we can see an increase in the duration of her work behavior. And the results from the social validity questionnaire show that the study was socially valid. 100% of the people surveyed found that the target behavior was very important, And a large majority of the people surveyed also found the procedures to be appropriate and the effects of the study to be satisfactory. And 100% of the people surveyed said that they would participate in a study like this again. The results of the study showed that the reward system was effective in increasing target behavior for all three of our clients. And those results support the findings of the studies that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. And we can talk about the threats to internal validity that may have influenced the results of our study. First of all, one of our clients, Kevin, was actually in the process of moving to a new home with his family during the study. So that definitely could have impacted his behavior throughout the duration of the 6 weeks. Also regarding maturation, all of the clients became slightly more skilled in piecework as time went on, so that could have influenced their likelihood to produce more and exhibit more work behavior. Also, we've got human observers, so we can always consider that to be a possible threat to internal validity because their judgments might affect the results. And finally, the consistency of the implementation of the reward system could also have been a threat to internal validity if the job coach did not remain consistent throughout the entire 6 weeks and for each client. We did do training in order to prevent something like that from happening, but again, it's still a possible threat to internal validity. Next, we have threats to construct validity. So the increased attention and contact that the client received during the intervention phase may have influenced their behavior. Also, the location of each client within the area could have been an influence, whether or not they were sitting in an area that might make them more prone to distractions. Also, the client's preference for certain jobs over others could be a factor. Depending on the day, there were different piecework jobs available. So if the client didn't particularly like the job that was available, they were probably less likely to exhibit work behavior on that day. Also, the time of day could have been a factor, whether or not that client was a morning person, or how recently they had their medication, or maybe how hungry they were if it was close to lunchtime. Those could all be factors in their behavior. And finally, the client's relationship with the job coach could be a factor. If they had a better rapport with the job coach, or if they didn't necessarily like their job coach, that could have affected how much work behavior that they were going to be exhibiting. Now we can talk about external validity and how we could enhance that in future research. We could change up the subjects that are used, so maybe use clients with different disabilities or different age groups, or even have subjects without developmental disabilities. Also, different settings like a school setting or maybe even a supported employment situation. Also, you can change up the time, either changing the length of time that you're observing or the hours from morning hours to afternoon hours. Future research could also expand on this study by using a different target behavior. Instead of work behavior, maybe we could try to increase exercising or practicing good hygiene or displaying socially appropriate behavior. And then finally, we could change the behavior change agent, which in the case of this study was a job coach. But if the setting was in a school setting, that could be a classroom teacher, or if it was at home, it could be a family member or a house staff. So any of these modifications could be used to enhance the external validity of studies that are done in the future. And they can also be used just to expand on the research in general that we've discussed in this presentation today. Thanks for listening.